one elderly woman, one corrupt officer, and a president who understood that the cruelest crimes are the ones committed in broad daylight. What started as public humiliation would end with an entire system on trial. Before we dive in, what time are you listening, and where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. Please like and subscribe to join the Ibrahim Traoré family. The market in Dudugu was crowded that morning. Vendors arranged vegetables on wooden tables. People haggled over prices for rice and cloth. The air smelled of spices and fresh bread from the corner bakery. Ibrahim Traoré walked through the market alone, moving between the stalls. He had driven himself here without the usual convoy, without security personnel surrounding him. Just another morning visiting ordinary places to see how people lived. He stopped at a fruit stand to examine mangoes. The vendor recognized him immediately but said nothing, just nodded with respect. Ibrahim appreciated the silence. These quiet moments away from the presidential compound gave him perspective. Then he heard shouting from the other side of the market, harsh words cutting through the normal noise of commerce. People turned to look. Some moved closer. Others stepped back. Ibrahim walked toward the commotion. Through the crowd, he saw an elderly woman standing beside a small vegetable cart. Her hands trembled. Her head was down, and in front of her stood a police officer. The officer was loud, aggressive, demanding something from the woman in a voice meant to be heard by everyone. The woman tried to respond, but her words were too quiet to carry over his shouting. Ibrahim moved closer, staying at the edge of the growing crowd. He watched. He listened, and he felt something cold settle in his chest. The officer was not investigating a crime. He was performing humiliation. The officer grabbed a handful of vegetables from the woman's cart and threw them on the ground. You think you can sell here without paying? You think the rules do not apply to you? Every word was designed to shame her in front of witnesses. The woman bent to pick up the scattered vegetables. The officer kicked them away from her reach. Stay down there. That is where people like you belong. Laughter came from somewhere in the crowd. Nervous laughter. The kind that comes from fear, not amusement. Ibrahim's jaw tightened. He recognized this pattern. This was not law enforcement. This was extortion wrapped in a uniform. And it was happening in broad daylight because no one expected consequences. The officer continued. You owe me for last week. You owe me for this week. And now you owe me for wasting my time. The woman finally looked up. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I paid you everything I had. I have nothing left. The officer smiled. Then you have nothing to sell. He kicked the cart. Vegetables rolled across the dirt. The woman gasped and reached for her goods. The officer stepped on her hand. That was when Ibrahim stepped forward. He moved through the crowd quietly. No announcement. No dramatic entrance. Just a steady walk toward the scene. People noticed him and began to whisper. Some backed away. Others pulled out phones. The officer did not see Ibrahim yet. He was too focused on his performance. Too confident in his power. He grabbed the woman's arm and pulled her to her feet roughly. You will come to the station now. We will discuss your debt properly there. Ibrahim spoke. His voice was calm, but it cut through every other sound. Let her go. The officer turned, annoyed at the interruption. His expression changed in stages. Confusion, recognition, shock, then something else. Calculation. The officer released the woman's arm, but did not step back. He straightened. He adjusted his uniform. And then he smiled. Mr. President, I am handling a legal matter here. This woman is operating without proper permits and has refused to comply with regulations. Ibrahim looked at the scattered vegetables, at the overturned cart, at the woman's trembling hands, at the crowd of witnesses who had seen everything. Then he looked back at the officer. What is your name? The officer hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Officer Sankara, sir. Second precinct. Ibrahim nodded slowly. Officer Sankara, tell me about these regulations. What permits does she need for a vegetable cart? The officer's smile stayed fixed. Street vendor permits, sir. Health inspections. Tax registration. The standard requirements. Ibrahim glanced at the woman. Do you have these permits? The woman nodded quickly. Yes, sir. I have papers. I paid for everything. She reached into a pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. Ibrahim took the envelope gently and opened it. Inside were official documents. Permits. Tax receipts. Health inspection certificates. All current. All properly stamped. Ibrahim held up the papers so the officer could see them clearly. These look like the standard requirements. The officer's smile faded slightly. Those could be forged, sir. We see that often in these markets. Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. These have government stamps. Are you saying government offices are issuing forged documents? The officer shifted his weight. His confidence cracked just slightly. I would need to verify them properly at the station, sir. That is standard procedure. Ibrahim folded the papers and handed them back to the woman. Then verify them now. Call your station. Have them check the registration numbers. The officer's hand moved toward his radio, then stopped. Sir, with respect, this is a minor administrative matter. I can handle this according to proper channels. Ibrahim's voice stayed level. Then handle it. Verify the documents. Right now, in front of these witnesses. The crowd pressed closer. Phones were raised, recording everything. The officer looked at the devices. His jaw tightened. He reached for his radio again. This time his hand was shaking slightly. He called his station and read off the registration numbers from the woman's papers. The response came through clearly enough for everyone nearby to hear. All documents are valid and current. No violations on record. The officer's face hardened. He lowered the radio slowly. Ibrahim waited. The silence stretched. Finally, he spoke. So her permits are valid. She has committed no violations. Yet you destroyed her property and assaulted her in public. The officer opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Sir, there must be some misunderstanding. Ibrahim pointed at the scattered vegetables, at the overturned cart, at the woman who was now crying quietly. This is not a misunderstanding. This is corruption. And you performed it in front of an entire market because you believed no one would stop you. But something felt wrong. The officer should have panicked, should have apologized, should have shown fear. Instead, he just stood there with a strange calm settling over his features, like someone who knew something Ibrahim did not. Ibrahim studied the officer's face. You are not worried. The officer met his eyes directly. With respect, Mr. President, you are making serious accusations based on a misunderstanding. I was performing my duties as assigned. If you have concerns, perhaps we should discuss this through proper administrative channels. The words were too smooth, too rehearsed. Ibrahim had heard this language before, the language of people who believed they were protected. He made a decision. You are suspended immediately pending investigation. Surrender your badge and weapon now. The officer smiled. Sir, only my commanding officer has authority to suspend me. You would need to go through the proper chain of command. Ibrahim felt ice in his veins. You are refusing a direct order from the president. The officer's smile widened. I am following procedure, sir. Just as I was trained. Just as my superiors instructed. If you have concerns about my conduct, please file a formal complaint with the police commission. They will review it according to protocol. Ibrahim pulled out his phone. He called his chief of security directly. I need a team in Daduga Market immediately. I am detaining a police officer for corruption and insubordination. The officer's smile never wavered. People in the crowd whispered urgently. This was escalating beyond a simple confrontation. This was a challenge to presidential authority in public, and the officer seemed completely unafraid. Security personnel arrived within minutes. They approached the officer to take him into custody. The officer raised his hand slowly. Gentlemen, I will cooperate fully. But I want it noted for the record that I was performing assigned duties when the president intervened without following proper procedure. He spoke clearly enough for every recording phone to hear. I respect the office, but I also respect the rule of law. If the president wants to arrest me for doing my job, let him do so publicly. Let everyone see how political interference works. Ibrahim's security chief looked uncertain. Sir, technically he is correct about the chain of command for disciplinary actions against police officers. If we detain him without going through proper channels, it could create legal complications. Ibrahim looked at the officer, at the crowd, at the phones recording everything. This was a trap. The officer had provoked this confrontation deliberately, had performed his corruption openly, had goaded Ibrahim into a public confrontation, and now was using procedure as a shield. But why? Ibrahim made a decision that surprised everyone. Release him. The security personnel stepped back. The officer lowered his hands. But I want your commanding officer here within the hour. We will resolve this through the chain of command you value so much. The officer nodded respectfully. As you wish, sir. He turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and sir, you might want to help that woman set up her cart. She still has vegetables to sell. The words were polite. The tone was mockery. Ibrahim helped the elderly woman gather her scattered produce. He righted her cart. He checked each vegetable for damage. The woman thanked him repeatedly through tears. He assured her everything would be resolved. But his mind was racing. That officer was not acting alone. The confidence, the preparation, the perfect use of procedure as a weapon. This was orchestrated. But by whom? And why provoke the president directly in public? His security chief approached quietly. Sir, the officer's commander is Inspector Zingrana. He is at the central station now. Says he will be here in 30 minutes. Ibrahim nodded. And in those 30 minutes, I want everything. Background on Officer Sankara. His assignments. His arrest record. Financial information. Everything. The security chief made calls. Ibrahim stayed in the market. He spoke with other vendors. Asked questions carefully. How often did police come through? What did they ask for? Who else had problems? The answers came slowly. Carefully. People were afraid to speak. But gradually a pattern emerged. Officer Sankara came through the market twice a week. Always alone. Always demanding payments from certain vendors. Always the same ones. The elderly. The disabled. The ones least able to fight back. One vendor finally spoke openly. He has been doing this for months, sir. We tried to report it. We went to the police station. Filed complaints. Nothing happened. They told us there was no evidence. That we were making false accusations against a decorated officer. Ibrahim felt the pieces clicking into place. Decorated officer. Multiple complaints. No action taken. This was not one corrupt policeman. This was systematic protection. But who was protecting him? And why? Inspector Zingrana arrived exactly 30 minutes later. He stepped out of his vehicle with 3 other officers. All of them moved with precision. Military bearing. They approached Ibrahim with formal salutes. Mr. President, you requested my presence. Ibrahim gestured toward Officer Sankara, who stood nearby watching everything with that same calm expression. This officer committed extortion and assault in my presence. He refused a direct presidential order. I want him charged immediately. Inspector Zingrana listened without expression. Sir, I understand your concern. However, Officer Sankara is one of my most reliable officers. He has received commendations for his work reducing market crime. If there was a misunderstanding today, I am certain we can resolve it internally. Ibrahim's voice dropped to something colder. I witnessed him extort money from an elderly woman. I watched him destroy her property and assault her. There was no misunderstanding. Inspector Zingrana nodded slowly. I see. And do you have evidence of this alleged extortion beyond your personal observation? The question hung in the air like a blade. Ibrahim understood immediately. The inspector was questioning his credibility. In public, in front of witnesses. This was not just protection. This was open defiance. Ibrahim pulled out his phone. I recorded the entire incident. The inspector's expression did not change. Sir, recording police operations without proper authorization may itself be a legal violation. Any such recording would likely be inadmissible in any formal proceeding. The crowd gasped. The inspector was now directly challenging the president's authority to document crimes. This was beyond bold. This was a declaration. We are untouchable. Ibrahim's security chief stepped forward. Inspector, you are addressing the president of Burkina Faso. Show proper respect. The inspector turned to face him. I am showing the proper respect by upholding the law. The law applies to everyone, even presidents who interfere with police operations. Something snapped into focus in Ibrahim's mind. This was not about one corrupt officer. This entire precinct was compromised. The inspector, his subordinates, the whole chain of command. And they were confident enough to challenge presidential authority in public because they believed someone was protecting them from above. He needed to find out who. And fast. Because if corruption had infected the police this deeply, it meant the rot went much higher. Ibrahim made a show of backing down. Inspector, you are correct. I should not interfere with police operations. I apologize for overstepping. Please continue your work. The inspector smiled. Thank you for understanding, sir. We all serve the same nation. The officers left. Officer Sankara gave Ibrahim one last look. Victory. Pure victory. Then they drove away. The crowd dispersed slowly. Some people looked disappointed. Others looked resigned. This was how it always ended. Power protecting power. But Ibrahim was not done. He called his most trusted intelligence officer. I need deep background on Inspector Zingrana. Every assignment. Every commendation. Every connection. And I need it done quietly. No official channels. The response came quickly. Understood, sir. How deep should we go? Ibrahim watched the police vehicles disappear down the street. All the way to the top. Because this does not end with a corrupt inspector. This ends with whoever is protecting him. He stayed in Deduga that day, moved through the market, visited shops in the village, talked with people, listened to stories. Every conversation added another piece to the pattern. Police corruption was not random. It was organized, systematic, and it had been running for months. That night, in a secure location outside the village, Ibrahim met with his intelligence team. They brought files, financial records, communication logs. What they had discovered made his blood run cold. Inspector Zingrana was not just corrupt. He was the center of a network that stretched across multiple precincts. Officers under his command had been systematically extorting money from vulnerable people throughout the region. The elderly, street vendors, small business owners, anyone who could not fight back. The money was collected weekly, funneled up through the chain of command, and then it disappeared into offshore accounts. Millions of francs, stolen from the poorest citizens, protected by the very people sworn to defend them. But here was what made Ibrahim's hands clench into fists. Every complaint filed against these officers had been blocked at the same level. The police commission, the civilian oversight body that was supposed to investigate corruption, they had received dozens of complaints, and they had buried every single one. Ibrahim looked at the name of the commission chairman, Commissioner Ouedraogo, a man he had appointed personally, a man he had trusted to clean up police corruption, a man who now appeared to be the architect of the entire system. The intelligence officer pointed at financial records. "Sir, we traced the offshore accounts. The money flows to a shell company. That company has connections to Commissioner Ouedraogo's family. His brother, his cousin, they are all benefiting." Ibrahim sat in silence. He had appointed a fox to guard the hen house, and that fox had built an empire. But now came the impossible question. How do you arrest the person in charge of investigating police corruption? How do you expose a system when the system is designed to protect itself? The intelligence officer spoke carefully. "Sir, if we move openly against Ouedraogo, he will activate his network. Evidence will disappear. Officers will scatter. We need to catch him in the act. With witnesses. With proof that cannot be denied." Ibrahim thought about Officer Sankara's smile, about the inspector's confidence, about the commissioner's careful blocking of every complaint. They believed they were untouchable. That belief was their weakness. He made his plan. It was dangerous. It required perfect timing, and it meant walking into the trap they had set. But it was the only way to expose the whole system at once. 3 days later, Ibrahim returned to Deduga Market. Same time, same routine, walking alone, visiting vendors, buying fruit, acting like the confrontation with Officer Sankara had been forgotten. Just another incident that went nowhere. Officer Sankara was there, watching from across the market, smiling. He knew Ibrahim would see him. He wanted Ibrahim to see him. This was psychological warfare. "We are still here. We are still in power. You changed nothing." Ibrahim bought vegetables from the same elderly woman. She packed them carefully, her hands still trembling slightly. She leaned close and whispered, "Sir, please be careful. They are watching you. They want you to come back. They have something planned." Ibrahim nodded. "I know. That is exactly what I am counting on." He paid her and walked through the market. He made sure to pass close to Officer Sankara, made sure their eyes met, made sure the officer saw that Ibrahim was not afraid. The officer approached. "Mr. President, back to check on our market vendors." Ibrahim smiled. "Just enjoying my day." The officer's smile matched his. "Of course. We all have jobs to do, even when those jobs are not appreciated." Ibrahim let the insult pass. He continued through the market. But he noticed things. More officers than usual, positioned at exits, watching his movements. They were hurting him, guiding him towards something. He let them. He walked into a narrow alley between market stalls. A quieter area, fewer witnesses. The perfect place for a confrontation. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Multiple sets. Officers moving into position. The trap was closing. Ibrahim turned. Officer Sankara stood at one end of the alley. Inspector Zingrana at the other. And between them, 2 more officers. All blocking his path. All wearing the same confident smiles. Inspector Zingrana spoke first. "Mr. President, we need to discuss something important. We have received reports of someone impersonating a government official, harassing police officers, interfering with legal operations. Very serious charges." Ibrahim understood immediately. They were going to arrest him, or try to create a scene, make it look like the president was interfering with police work. generate enough chaos to muddy everything, then disappear the evidence while the public was confused. Officer Sankara stepped closer. We have witnesses who will testify that you bribed vendors for false statements against police officers, that you recorded officers without consent, that you threatened legal police operations. The words were absurd, but they were being spoken by uniformed officers. In some circles, that would be enough. Ibrahim did not move, did not show fear, did not reach for his phone. He just stood there, waiting, because he knew something they did not. His intelligence team was recording everything, from buildings surrounding the market, from phones held by vendors who had been carefully positioned. Every word, every movement, every criminal act these officers were about to commit. The inspector pulled out handcuffs. Sir, I am placing you under temporary detention for interference with police operations. You will be released once we sort this out. But we need to do this properly, through official channels. Ibrahim spoke clearly, loud enough to be heard, loud enough to be recorded. You are attempting to arrest the president of Burkina Faso on false charges to cover up your corruption. This is treason. The inspector smiled. This is procedure, sir. Please do not make this difficult. The officers moved closer, hands reaching for Ibrahim's arms. This was the moment. This was when everything would either work or collapse. Ibrahim's intelligence chief had promised 30 seconds. That was how long it would take for backup to arrive once he gave the signal. Ibrahim raised his hand, made a simple gesture, touching his collar. The signal. Nothing happened. The officers grabbed his arms, started to pull them behind his back. The handcuffs came out. Ibrahim's mind raced. Where was his team? Where was the backup? Had something gone wrong? 20 seconds. The inspector's smile widened. He knew backup was not coming. He knew something Ibrahim did not. The intelligence team had been blocked somehow. Delayed. Diverted. This was why they were so confident. 15 seconds. The handcuffs touched Ibrahim's wrists. Officer Sankara laughed. Not even the president can ignore procedure. The other officers joined in. This was their moment of triumph. Their proof that they were beyond accountability. 10 seconds. Ibrahim calculated his options. He could fight, but he was outnumbered. Could call for help, but who would respond? The police were the ones arresting him. Could appeal to the crowd, but they were afraid. This entire system was designed to make resistance impossible. 5 seconds. The handcuffs clicked around one wrist. The inspector leaned close. You should have stayed in your office, Mr. President. Some things are too big even for you to fix. Ibrahim looked him in the eye. You are right about one thing. This is too big for me alone. 0 seconds. And then the silence broke. Not with Ibrahim's backup, but with something else. Something none of them expected. Cameras. Dozens of them. Appearing from windows and doorways. Professional equipment. News cameras. Journalists. The entire arrest was being broadcast live. Every news outlet in Burkina Faso. Every international reporter who had been quietly tipped off. Every witness who had been carefully positioned. All filming. All broadcasting. All watching. The inspector froze. Officer Sankara's smile died. The other officers looked around in panic. They had walked directly into a trap, and they had performed their corruption in front of the entire nation. Ibrahim spoke clearly for the cameras. These officers are attempting to arrest me to prevent investigation of systematic police corruption. They believe they are above the law because Commissioner Ouedraogo has been protecting them. Today, that protection ends. On cue, another group entered the alley. Not Ibrahim's security team. Military police. Elite anti-corruption units that reported directly to the military command, not the civilian police structure. The commissioner could not block these forces, could not bury their investigations, could not make them disappear. The military police commander approached the inspector. You are under arrest for corruption, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping of the head of state. Remove those handcuffs from the president immediately. The inspector's hands shook as he unlocked the cuffs. His world was collapsing in real time. Officer Sankara tried to run. He made it 3 steps before military police tackled him. The other officers surrendered without fighting. They knew it was over. The protection they had relied on could not save them now. Not with cameras broadcasting everything. Not with the military involved. Not with proof visible to everyone. But Ibrahim was not finished. This is not about 4 corrupt officers. This is about the system that protected them. Bring Commissioner Ouedraogo here. Now, the military police commander nodded. Sir, we have teams moving on his location as we speak. We will have him in custody within the hour. The cameras kept rolling. Ibrahim spoke directly to them, to the nation watching. For months, these officers have been extorting money from the most vulnerable people in our society. Elderly vendors, disabled workers, people who could not fight back. And when complaints were filed, they were buried by the very commission meant to investigate them. He held up documents his intelligence team had prepared, financial records showing the flow of stolen money, communications proving coordination, testimony from dozens of victims who had been silenced. All of it now public, all of it undeniable. In his office at the police commission headquarters, Commissioner Ouedraogo watched the broadcast on his screen. He watched his network collapse. He watched his officers arrested. He watched years of careful corruption destroyed in minutes. And he knew there was nowhere left to run. He picked up his phone, started to make a call. Military police burst through his door before he could dial. He was on the ground, hands cuffed behind his back, his phone seized as evidence. The Burkina Faso flag behind his desk looked down on his arrest. Back in Dudugu, the military police were loading corrupt officers into transport vehicles. News reporters shouted questions. Ibrahim answered them calmly, methodically. This was a carefully planned operation to expose systematic corruption. Every step was documented. Every action was legal. No one was above the law. A reporter asked the critical question, "Sir, why did you let them try to arrest you? Why put yourself at risk?" Ibrahim's answer was simple. Because that was the only way to show the nation what we were fighting. If I had arrested them quietly, people would have doubted, would have wondered if it was political. This way, everyone saw the truth. Everyone saw them commit crimes on camera while believing they were protected. The elderly woman whose humiliation had started everything approached Ibrahim. Tears streamed down her face. She tried to speak, but emotion choked her words. Ibrahim gently touched her shoulder. This was never just about you. This was about every person they hurt, every vendor they threatened, every family they stole from. Today, that stops. The arrests spread throughout the day. 23 officers, 7 precinct commanders, 12 oversight officials, all connected to the same network, all protected by the same system, all now facing justice in full view of the public. Evidence was seized from homes and offices. Offshore accounts were frozen. Shell companies were shut down. The investigation expanded beyond police into other government agencies. Because when corruption runs this deep, it never stops at one department. That evening, Ibrahim returned to the presidential office. The Burkina Faso flag hung behind him as he addressed the nation on television. Today we saw how corruption operates. Not in shadows, not in secret, but in public. Performed by uniformed officers who believed their positions made them untouchable. They were wrong. He explained the entire operation. How the initial confrontation was designed to expose the system. How they had documented everything. How they had built an airtight case before moving. How they had used the criminals' own confidence against them. But he also acknowledged the cost. An elderly woman was humiliated. She was assaulted. She was threatened. All because I needed to see how deep the corruption went. That weighs on me. But I want every victim to know this. Your suffering was not ignored. Your complaints were not forgotten. We simply needed to build a case that could not be buried. Phone calls flooded the presidential office. More victims coming forward. More evidence. More complaints that had been blocked for months or years. Each one adding to the case. Each one proving that what they had exposed was just the surface. In his cell, Commissioner Ouedraogo finally spoke to investigators. He was offered no deals. No reduced sentences. No protection. Just a choice. Cooperate and face justice. Or remain silent and face worse. He talked. He gave names. He described structures. He revealed networks that stretched into areas Ibrahim had not even suspected. The investigation expanded into the Ministry of Interior, into the judicial system, into local government offices. Everywhere the commissioner's network had placed people. Everywhere his protection had allowed corruption to flourish. The cleanup would take months. But it had started. 3 weeks later, Ibrahim returned to Dudugu Market. No cameras this time. No announcement. Just a quiet visit. He found the elderly woman at her cart. Her vegetables were arranged neatly. Her hands steady. Her expression peaceful. She saw him and smiled. "Mr. President, you came back." Ibrahim nodded. "I wanted to make sure you were safe. That the harassment stopped." She gestured at her cart. "Look, no officers demanding payments. No threats. Just honest business." For the first time in months, other vendors approached, thanked him, shared stories of relief, of being able to keep their earnings, of not living in fear. Each story was small, but together they represented something larger. A shift, a change, proof that fighting corruption actually mattered. Ibrahim bought vegetables again, paid full price, refused her offer of a discount. As he prepared to leave, the woman spoke quietly. "Sir, why did you help me? I am nobody." Ibrahim stopped and turned to face her. "That is exactly why. Because if the president only helps important people, then what good is he?" He left the market thinking about that question. About power, about protection, about who deserves justice. The answer was simple. Everyone. Not just the wealthy. Not just the connected. Everyone. Back in the capital, trials were beginning. Evidence was being presented in public courts. Every document, every recording, every testimony. Nothing hidden, nothing classified. The nation watched as the corrupt faced consequences. Some were convicted. Some fled. Some cooperated. But all faced the same system they had abused. Ibrahim stood at his office window, looking out at Ouagadougou. The Burkina Faso flag flew above the compound. He thought about Officer Sankara's confidence, about the inspector's arrogance, about the commissioner's protection. They had believed the system made them untouchable. But systems are built by people, and people can tear them down. It requires patience. It requires proof. It requires the willingness to become bait in your own trap. But it is possible, and it is necessary. Because the cruelest corruption is the kind that targets the helpless. The elderly woman selling vegetables. The disabled vendor trying to earn a living. The ordinary people who cannot fight back. When those who are sworn to protect them become their predators, the entire social contract breaks. And if a president will not stand up for the most vulnerable, then who will? If a leader will not risk confrontation with corruption, then what is leadership worth? The answer is nothing. Leadership means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Even when it is dangerous, even when it is difficult, even when it means walking into traps. Ibrahim returned to his desk. More reports waited, more complaints, more investigations. Corruption had not ended. It never completely ends. But it had been wounded, exposed, made costly, and that was progress. He thought about the market in Ouagadougou, about the woman at her cart, about the vendors who could finally work in peace. That was why he fought, not for abstract principles, not for political victories, for the small moments of peace that ordinary people deserved. The question is not whether corruption exists. It always will. The question is whether leaders are willing to fight it, whether they will risk their own safety to protect others, whether they understand that true power is measured not by what you control, but by what you protect. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.